All right, I apologize in advance for doing a second live, and the second part is I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, so you may have to deal with it. Does who you work with matters? Does who you work with matter? And I have a really quick story. So I got a call this morning, and this is why this is actually burning up inside me right now. So I got to get this out. Call this one person looking to purchase a piece of land in order to build a home. Great, I'm fine with land. And being a builder, the licensed builder, and taking something from plan to completed project, I got it. I've done it. I can help people with that. Here's where it gets really interesting. So he calls, and there's this piece of land in West Bridgewater he wants to take a look at. The piece of land's been under contract 6 times and fallen apart 6 times. So he wants to, not only does he doesn't care about seeing it, he wants to write an offer on it. And I go, well, let's take a look at it first. And I look it up and I go, this piece of land doesn't conform to the zoning bylaws to be a buildable lot, even though the description says it's a residentially developable piece of land, which is just a term, meaning that it's in an area where they can do residential development, but it doesn't conform. All right. So I go through the requirements for him on a residential piece of land in the zoning bylaws. Now he knows nothing about the zoning bylaws, which I don't expect him to. But then he goes on to tell me that he had another piece of land under contract in Easton that he actually went to the closing table on and was told by the attorney at the closing table, hey, by the way, did you know there's no access to this land? Now, one, the guy should have been doing some due diligence on his own. That goes without saying. But I asked him, I said, were you working with an agent on that land purchase in Easton? And he said, yes. I was expecting him to say no, that he went straight to the list agent. He said he had an agent. I said, well, who's the agent? And I said, don't tell me a name. He goes, well, it was a friend of the family who's helped us purchase stuff in the past. I said, so he wrote an offer for you. You went to purchase and sale, and you're going to the closing. And you find out at the closing from the attorney that you can't access the land. I said, did the agent, because I pulled it up really quickly. I'm like, hey, this land is landlocked. Let me see if the piece of land in front of it has a house on it or what the case is. And it's actually a house, I know the people, and there's a raised ranch there. They're not going to sell them access to someone can build a house behind theirs. That's not going to happen. So the agent did no due diligence for him. The guy put $5,000 down, $5,000 he needs because he's not a wealthy person, and finds out at the closing table that for the first time that there's no access. So first, he didn't do any of his own due diligence, never went by the property, never walked the land. It's something you always got to do on a piece of property. 2, you got to be pulling up records from the town. You got to be pulling up conservation maps because you got to know if there's wetlands on there, what you can possibly do. 3, you got to understand zoning bylaws and what you can and can't do. Does it have frontage? If it doesn't meet the zoning bylaws, you're going to do a variance. And variance has very specific criteria. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, having to do with shape, size, topography of the land that's different from the others in the area that causes a hardship for the owner. So all that aside, none of that had been done for him. And then I asked, well, how long ago did this happen? And he goes, oh, that was like 3 weeks ago. And I go, well, they're still holding your deposit? How come? He goes, well, I don't know. I said, well, did you fill out a deposit release form? He goes, well, no. I said, well, your agent has to send you a deposit release form. You have to sign it. The seller has to sign it because the listing brokerage can't release the money without agreement from both parties. So the short story here out of a long story is that who you work with matters. Just because it's a family friend and they've helped with other stuff doesn't mean they know what they're doing. Maybe the guy's fantastic with single family homes. Maybe. But he clearly doesn't know a damn thing about land. So who you work with really matters. Now the guy's out $5,000 he has to try and get back. It should have never gone to an offer because the first question is, hey, do you realize this is landlocked? How are you going to access it? The next question after that is, it doesn't even conform. You're going to need a variance. And the third is, you need permission from the people in front to be able to actually do anything, to access the land. All that matters. There should have never even been an offer on it. Should have never been an offer. The guy's in no shape. Then aside from the fact that, well, you're going to build, how are you going to build? Were you financing it? well, I figured I could just hold on to the land and, it's going to be worth more in the future. I said, well, do you understand there's still holding costs in the land? You still have to pay taxes on it and insurance. This piece of land is $1,800 a year in tax. It's probably going to cost you $200 a year in insurance. At $2,000 a year, do you have $2,000 a year to be able to spend on that property while you wait to be able to potentially do something? He's like, well, no. I'm like, well, that's what it would have been. Like, no one had that discussion with you? This is the stuff that drives me crazy within real estate. It actually makes me angry that people go out there, and just like I see agents all the time, I can help you buy and sell anything, anywhere. No, you can't. No, you can't. I don't do anything commercial because I haven't done anything commercial. I get people ask me all this, can you help me find office space? I'm sorry, it's just not something I have an expertise in. I refer it over to somebody who does understand it really well. But the same thing with land. Whatever the case may be, you got to make sure the person you're working with knows what they're doing, because it's going to cost you money if they don't. And then what's your recourse at that point? What is your recourse? You're not going to have any. You're like, oh, it's a life lesson. Well, it's an expensive life lesson. Ends up the guy's credit is horrendous and he has a car repossession on his credit. So I pointed him in directions on how to handle the repossession. I put him to a video I made on how to improve your credit score. And I'll check in with him probably in 6 months. But I told him his best chance moving forward is probably not building from scratch, because I know my cost to build from scratch are about $179 a square foot. And he doesn't have that money. Second, if he had part of the money, he wouldn't be able to do it all at once. And so it's very likely the building code would change over time. And as he did something and then sat on it, well, his plans would probably expire, his building permits would expire, and you have to update the property again. So it just becomes, like, if you've never built, like, there's a lot that goes into it. And to just say, well, the land is cheap. Well, it's cheap for a reason. So land around here goes anywhere from $350,000 to $450,000 for Form A lot, which means it conforms to the zoning bylaws and has utilities at the street. Yeah, Jim, it was $179 a square foot. Yes. That was just for the construction. That didn't include the land. There's a lot that goes into it. And I told him his best path at that point was probably finding a house that he could renovate, repair, and do something with his family. But his best financing, he hadn't talked to a lender, of course, his best financing route is probably going to be FHA, because you can get FHA financing for sub 600 credit scores. You're going to need to probably put a little bit more down. There are no specific guidelines. So a lender may say you could, they want 50% down, but some could say they want 10% down. Depends on the community. But long story short, who you work with matters. I could go on and on about this because there are agents that do this stuff all the time. And no, Jim, that was stick construction. It wasn't modular. Granted, we were doing nicer construction, all maple cabinets, hardwood floors, ceramic tile, custom showers, etc. Anyway, who you work with matters. If you're looking to build, you need to work with an agent who has experience building. If you're looking to buy land, you got to work with an agent who understands land. If you're looking to renovate a property, you got to work with an agent who understands the renovation of property, or in this case, actually licensed to do the work. Not that I want to do the work, but I can definitely help you work through it. And back to this guy, FHA is probably his best choice, even with bad credit on FHA. Where typically a car repossession stays on your credit report for 7 years, so a lot of, say, conventional financing wouldn't touch you. FHA, 2 to 3 years, they can look at it and they may be able to get you approved if he does the things I told him to. Now, that's the key. If he does the things I told him to, it's going to require him to be a little uncomfortable. But anyway, who you work with matters. It definitely matters. It does. So that's my message for today. It's my rant. I'm all set, and have a great one.